It began subtly, almost unnoticeably, just a faint, low growl in the silence of the night. At first, Rachel and Tom Parker brushed it off as one of those weird things dogs do. Their golden retriever, Benny, had always been the calmest, most affectionate soul. He'd been part of the family long before their son, Ethan, was born. Benny had curled up beside Rachel's belly when she was pregnant, and he'd greeted baby Ethan with gentle licks and wagging tails the day he came home from the hospital. So when the growling started, it felt off. It was always at night. Always in Ethan's room. At first, they thought Benny might be uncomfortable with Ethan's new toddler bed. Or maybe he was just growling in his sleep. But soon, the sounds became clearer and more frequent. Every night, right around 2 a.m., the soft thud of Benny's paws would echo down the hallway, followed by a low, deep rumble. Not barking, not whining, just a growl. It wasn't angry, but it was firm. Protective. Intentional. Rachel and Tom began watching closely. One night, Rachel crept down the hall after hearing the sound again. She peeked into Ethan's room and saw Benny, standing stiff beside the crib, his eyes locked on the far corner of the room. His hackles weren't raised, and he didn't seem aggressive, but something about his posture screamed warning. She flipped on the light. Nothing there. Ethan stirred but didn't wake. Benny didn't take his eyes off that corner for a long, tense moment. "What are you growling at?" Rachel whispered. Benny turned to look at her, then back at the corner, and finally sat down. The growl faded. Tom insisted it was probably a shadow, maybe a mouse, or even a bug that Benny could hear but they couldn't. But Rachel wasn't convinced. Days turned into weeks. The growling continued. Benny refused to sleep anywhere but Ethan's room now. He'd scratch at the door until they let him in. They even tried removing him, closing the door and letting Ethan sleep alone, but that night, Ethan woke up screaming. Benny barked so frantically they thought he was going to tear the door off its hinges. What was going on? Then one night, everything changed. Rachel and Tom had installed a baby monitor with night vision. They wanted to see what was happening, just in case it was something explainable. At 1:58 a.m., the monitor picked up movement. Benny was already on his feet, ears perked. He walked to Ethan's bed slowly, and began to growl again. That's when the temperature in the room dropped. The monitor's thermometer showed a sudden 6-degree drop in just seconds. Rachel and Tom, watching from their bedroom, exchanged a confused glance. Then the camera flickered. And then, static. It came back on a moment later, shaky and blurry, but just enough to see Benny lunging at something in the darkness. His teeth bared. A bark tore through the speaker so loud it made Rachel jump. Ethan began to cry. Rachel and Tom raced into the room. Benny was standing in front of Ethan, blocking the crib. His body was rigid, eyes locked on that same corner. He barked again, sharp and vicious. It echoed off the walls. But again, there was nothing there. Tom stepped forward slowly, trying not to frighten Benny. "Easy, boy," he whispered. Benny didn't move. He stayed between Ethan and the corner, growling low. Rachel scooped up Ethan, who was sobbing and clinging to her neck. He wasn't hurt, but he was scared. That was the last night they brushed it off. What was Benny seeing? What had changed in Ethan's room? And why was their sweet, gentle dog suddenly turning into a guardian with fire in his eyes every single night? The next morning, Tom made a decision. He contacted a home inspector, a pest control expert, and, hesitantly, a paranormal investigator. None of them knew what they were about to uncover. The next morning, The house was filled with an uneasy silence. Benny lay at the foot of Ethan's bed, eyes wide open, head raised. He hadn't slept much. Neither had Tom or Rachel. Ethan was unusually quiet at breakfast, clinging to his juice cup and staring into space. Benny followed every move the toddler made, never letting more than a few steps come between them. By mid-morning, the doorbell rang. The first visitor was Mitch, a home inspector with years of experience and a kind, reassuring demeanor. He checked the windows for drafts, inspected the walls for mold or structural damage, and scanned every inch of the baby's room with a thermal camera. "Everything checks out," he said after 2 hours. "No drafts, no rodent activity, no temperature inconsistencies except that one reading from the baby monitor last night." But that could be a glitch. Rachel frowned. "What about that cold drop we saw on the monitor?" Mitch shrugged. "I've seen those in faulty units. Nothing to worry about." But she was worried. Because that monitor had never glitched before. Later in the afternoon, a pest control expert came through. He looked for rats, raccoons, even snakes, anything that might be triggering Benny's instincts. "Nothing. I'll leave a few traps just in case," he said. "But honestly, there's no evidence of pests." Rachel thanked him, but her nerves were stretched thin. That evening, Tom made the call he'd been avoiding. He rang up his college friend Jamie, a soft-spoken woman with a calm, clinical approach to paranormal activity. She didn't look the part, no long robes or crystals, just a plain gray coat and a duffel bag filled with instruments that looked like they belonged in a lab more than a seance. When Jamie arrived, Benny immediately stood up and walked to her, his nose twitching. He didn't bark or growl, but he didn't wag his tail either. He just stared. Jamie crouched and looked him in the eye. "Good boy," she whispered. "You've been protecting someone, haven't you?" Rachel and Tom exchanged nervous glances. Jamie pulled out a small EMF detector and a temperature gun. She swept Ethan's room methodically. "Tell me exactly where Benny focuses when he growls," she asked. Rachel pointed to the far corner of the room, just left of the closet. Jamie nodded. "That's where the cold spot is. Right there. And look, EMF spike. Not huge, but definitely unusual. Especially considering there are no electronics near that area." Tom tried to suppress a scoff. "Couldn't that be faulty wiring or something?" Jamie smiled patiently. "I'm not saying you have ghosts. But I am saying this spot has all the textbook signs of something." That night, Jamie set up motion sensors and a thermal camera. She placed a small voice recorder on Ethan's dresser. Benny was already pacing before 2 a.m. Then came the growl. Low. Deep. The monitor didn't cut out this time. Jamie had brought her own. And what they saw chilled them to the core. The thermal camera picked up a distinct figure, not a shape, not a blur. A human-sized heat signature that slowly moved from the closet corner toward the crib. And Benny, just like before, lunged in front of it. Then came the voice. From the audio recorder, soft, barely audible at first. A woman's voice. Whispering. "Don't take him, not my baby." Jamie leaned forward, staring at the screen. That's not a trick. That voice wasn't in the room with us." Rachel was shaking. "What does that mean?" Jamie replayed the recording. This time, the whisper was followed by a faint sob. Then the whisper again, clearer. "He's not yours, give him back." Tom backed away from the monitor. "That's it. We're leaving tonight." Jamie held up a hand. Wait. I think I understand now. She pointed to Benny. He's not just growling randomly. He's guarding Ethan from her. Rachel looked at her in disbelief. Who is she? Jamie's face darkened. I don't know yet. But whatever she is, she thinks Ethan belongs to her. Morning came slowly. Rachel, Tom, and Jamie sat silently at the kitchen table. None of them had slept. Benny hadn't moved from the door of Ethan's room all night. Every few hours, he'd growl, not fiercely, but like a warning. Tom finally broke the silence. So what do we do now? Burn sage? Call a priest? Move? Jamie looked exhausted but calm. We don't need theatrics, we need information. Something happened here, or someone did. And that someone left a mark. She slid her laptop open. What year was the house built? 1932, Tom said, rubbing his eyes. Why? Because that closet, it's part of an addition. Look at the blueprints. That room didn't even exist when the house was built. It was added during renovations in 1991. Jamie was already deep in old newspaper archives, property records, and crime logs. She narrowed her search to incidents around their street during the 90s, and there it was. Missing child. 1992, girl named Lila. 3 years old. Disappeared without a trace. The address? 1 digit off. Next door, Jamie whispered. She went missing from the house next door. Rachel leaned over her shoulder. Wait, the house that was abandoned until just a few years ago? Jamie nodded. Yep. And then sold, bulldozed, and merged into your lot when the elderly owner passed away. Your yard includes part of what used to be their basement. Rachel turned pale. Jamie clicked deeper into the article. The child's mother had insisted Lila was taken by something. She claimed she saw a figure standing near her crib the night before she disappeared, but police dismissed it as trauma-induced hallucinations. The case went cold. Tom whispered, You think, that woman's voice on the recorder, that's her? Could be, Jamie said. Maybe her soul never left. Maybe she's stuck, reliving that night. Maybe she sees Ethan and thinks he's her baby, Rachel finished, her voice trembling. That night, they took precautions. Jamie set up salt lines, more thermal cameras, and placed protective symbols discreetly around the nursery. She gently asked Rachel and Tom to sleep in the living room with Ethan. But Benny refused to leave the hallway outside Ethan's door. He stood vigil, ears up, eyes on the door. 2:34 a.m. The house grew colder. Not just chilly, icy. The walls creaked. The baby monitor hissed softly. And then the closet creaked open. Ethan was in Rachel's arms on the downstairs couch. He stirred lightly in his sleep, but didn't cry. Upstairs, the thermal camera lit up with heat again. A faint outline. A figure. Small. Not the woman this time, but a child. She stood at the edge of the crib, as if waiting. Then came a whisper, soft and impossibly sad. Where's Mama? Benny growled, but this time, not aggressively. It sounded almost confused. Rachel and Jamie, watching from the monitor, leaned in. The childlike figure turned. Its thermal outline looked toward the door, toward Benny. Then something changed. The air thickened. A second shape emerged. Taller, darker. The same heat signature from the night before. It towered behind the child figure. Benny sprang into a defensive stance, teeth bared. Rachel cried out, "Jamie, what's happening?" Jamie's eyes widened. That's not the mother. On the screen, the child's shape backed into the corner. The larger figure moved toward the door. Benny barked. Loud. Defiant. The thermal outline froze. And then vanished. In an instant, the temperature readings spiked, the cameras glitched, and all electronics in the nursery powered off. Silence returned. Rachel rushed upstairs to find Benny in front of the closet, fur raised, growling lowly. The room was icy but empty. Jamie followed close behind. "It's not just a residual haunting," she said. "There's something else. Something darker that's been hiding behind the mother's grief." Tom arrived last, holding Ethan. "What do we do?" Jamie hesitated. "We need to find her. The real mother. The woman who lost her child. I think she's trying to protect Ethan too, but whatever's hiding behind her, it's using her grief. Feeding on it." The next morning brought a thick fog over the neighborhood. The kind that wrapped around everything like a warning. Inside the house, the family gathered in the living room, the previous night's events still echoing in their minds. Benny sat upright near Ethan, his eyes alert, his posture stiff. He hadn't slept. Jamie had made a decision. "I need to find her," she said firmly. "Lila's mother. Or someone who knew her. Someone who can help us piece this together." Rachel nodded. "I'll come with you." They drove to the city records department. Hours of searching through archives, old addresses, and faded photos finally led them to a name: Elaine Mercer, Lila's mother. She had moved out of state, remarried, but never stopped talking about her daughter. With the help of an old contact, Jamie tracked her down and made a call. Elaine, now in her 60s, hesitated at first. She had buried that part of her life, or tried to. But when Jamie mentioned a child, growling dog, and the thermal image of a small figure asking for Mama, Elaine fell silent. And then she asked for the address. 2 days later, she arrived. Elaine stood quietly in Ethan's room, gently placing her hand on the crib. "It still smells like lilac," she whispered. "That's what I used to spray on Lila's sheets to help her sleep." Rachel stood behind her. "We think she's here. Trying to protect Ethan. But there's something else too. Something terrifying." Elaine's eyes welled up. "I know. I felt it. The night Lila disappeared, I woke up to the sound of whispering. When I got to her crib, she was gone. But I could still feel her. Something took her. Something that pretended to be me." Jamie asked gently, "Do you think you'd know her spirit? If she's here?" Elaine didn't respond. She just looked up, as if listening. That night, the house was prepared again. Cameras. Salt lines. Candles. Elaine was placed in the nursery. Benny refused to leave her side. 2:36 a.m. The temperature dropped. The closet creaked. Rachel and Tom watched from the monitors downstairs, holding hands tightly. Then came the soft voice again. "Mama?" Elaine's eyes filled with tears. "Lila, baby, is that you?" The thermal image appeared on screen. A small child. Closer than ever before. She stepped out of the shadows, into view. Jamie whispered, "She's responding." But suddenly, the air grew heavy. The shadow, the larger one, began to form again. Hovering behind the child figure, looming, pulsing with a rage unlike anything they'd seen. The room's door slammed shut. Lights flickered. Benny barked, lunged, then growled louder than ever before. Elaine shouted, "Get away from her!" The shadow advanced. Benny stood between the entity and the crib, his body bristling with tension. But instead of attacking, the shadow reached toward Lila's figure, trying to pull her back. Elaine stepped forward. "You can't have her again. Not this time." With trembling hands, she pulled a worn teddy bear from her bag. It had Lila's name stitched on the collar. "I've kept this all these years. You left this behind, baby." As she knelt and held it out, the child's thermal image inched forward. A pause. Then she touched it. A soft cry echoed through the room. And then, the light changed. The shadow hissed like a candle snuffed out. It twisted in the air, shrieking, and vanished into the wall behind the closet. The room returned to normal temperature. The cameras cleared. The candles stopped flickering. And the child's figure? It smiled. Faint. Peaceful. And then slowly faded into a soft light that enveloped the room. Elaine sobbed. "She's free." Benny relaxed for the first time in days, lying down with a low whine, eyes blinking slowly. Downstairs, the monitors went blank for a moment and then returned to a normal feed. That night, for the first time in over a week, Ethan slept soundly. No growling. No cold air. No shadows. Just peace. Months later, Elaine visited again, not to grieve, but to bring flowers for the garden Rachel planted in Lila's memory. Benny, now older and slower, sat beside Ethan on the grass, watching the butterflies. Jamie published her findings in a journal on supernatural phenomena, but left out many details. Some things were just too sacred. The house became a home again. No more whispers. No more nightmares. Just the memory of a little girl who had waited for her mother and the brave dog who wouldn't stop protecting the living from the lingering past. Some stories stay with us forever, and this one is a reminder of how deep love, loyalty, and courage can truly go, whether from a mother, a child, or even a dog. If this tale touched your heart like it did ours, don't forget to like the video and share it with someone who believes in the power of love beyond this world. And if you enjoy stories where animals and humans share unbreakable bonds, consider subscribing to our channel, The Loyal Tales, for more heartwarming journeys like this one. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and hug your pets a little tighter tonight.